Sit back and get comfortable. I have a few stories to share with you.
Landlords from Hell. When I was in my early 20s and living in Chicago, I wasn't making much money. When I found this apartment, it was too good to be true. The top floor of a duplex with 6 rooms for $775 a month. The agent who showed me the apartment stressed to me that the landlords were very religious. I didn't have a problem with that, even if it did sound a little ominous. The landlords were an elderly couple that lived downstairs. They seemed okay at first. When I saw them in the yard, they would smile at me. I took good care of the house. Then, when they saw I was having my boyfriend over, things started to get really weird. One day I was in my office writing. I hear a knock at the door. I open it, and it's the old lady from downstairs. Before I can say hello, she says, "Have you ever gotten an abortion?" I just shut the door in her face. No, thanks. This was a colossal mistake. The house was laid out kind of weird. There was a door at the bottom of a flight of stairs that I thought led to a communal laundry room. But after accidentally opening it once, I discovered it led directly into my landlord's living room. I unfortunately learned this the hard way. I was in my kitchen cooking. My boyfriend was at work and I was by myself when I heard what sounded like the click of a door. "Okay," I say out loud. "What the fuck was that?" I didn't really make the connection. It could have been the door that led into their living room. I walk into the hallway and look around. I don't see anyone at the end of the hallway. I poke my head into all of the rooms. Nobody there. Then I look down the staircase leading to their house, and the neighbor lady is standing there, staring me down. I screamed. She flinched and stepped back into her apartment and swung the door shut. After that, every time I left the house, and I spent every possible moment out of the house after that incident, I would come back, and something would have been moved. A window would be shut. Once, the shower was dripping and my towel was damp. I couldn't lock the door because since it was technically a door to their house, they were the only ones with the key. The knocking got so frequent, 3 or 4 times a day, that me and my boyfriend propped up an old mattress so we wouldn't have to hear it while we slept. The second to last straw was when I opened the door for work and the stairs were gone. I physically could not leave my house because there were no stairs. They had been dismantled and were sitting on their porch. I called them repeatedly, but they didn't answer. Finally, their son came out of the house and explained that they were remodeling their porch. He told me I had to cut through their apartment downstairs. I descended the stairs and opened the door, and they were both sitting at their filthy kitchen table, staring at me. The phone was in its cradle. They must have heard it ringing. They kept staring at me with this blank look on their faces. I crossed their kitchen and left out their back door. A few days later, I came home from my job and noticed the bathroom floor was almost completely flooded, like somebody left a faucet on or the shower on. The old woman, seeing that I had come home, came upstairs and knocked, screaming at me that I had flooded the bathroom and that her son had to come fix it. I was so run down at this point that I just told her it was okay. Her son comes by a few hours later. He is shit-faced. I open the door and tell him that I need an hour or so before he comes, and he picks something up and swings it at me. It was a massive wrench. I somehow duck out of the way, and he stumbles over. I book it down the newly repaired stairs as quickly as possible and call the police. They come by and take down a complaint, but claim since there was no physical contact, they can't do anything. I learn later that the old couple has a daughter on the force. In the middle of the night, me, my boyfriend, and several of his friends packed all of our stuff into a Chevy Astro. We lived in hotels in the van for a month until we found another house. They never attempted to contact us again. Old landlords, let's not meet again.
The attendant told us his name was Reed. He was sitting in the back of the cage, almost as if he were waiting for something. His eyes settled on us. All the other dogs were barking loudly, rattling in their cages. Reed just stared. "What do you think?" Bill asked. "I don't know," I said, honestly. I had been hoping for a dog that looked like it wanted to be adopted. He seems a bit distant. "He's just scared, is all," Bill said. "I really think that's the one. Nice and quiet." I shouldn't have listened, but I let him talk me into it. Reed was in the back seat when we were driving home minutes later. When we got home, he was completely disinterested in the food we'd bought. I had never seen a dog refuse to eat and walk away from a freshly placed bowl. "That's weird," I told Bill. "He's just getting used to things," Bill said. But he wasn't. Days passed, and Reed didn't eat. I tried several different brands. None worked. He would just sit and stare at us while we watched TV. Finally, in desperation, I called the shelter. I asked if there was anyone there who might have known anything about Reed. "He's not eating," I told them. "I'm worried he's sick." "He's definitely not sick," the vet told me. "We did a pretty thorough checkup, and Reed's in fine condition. I did see some signs of abuse from the previous owner, but nothing that hasn't already healed. Unfortunately, we see that a lot. Maybe he is emotionally distressed. We see that more than we'd like, too." "What did he eat when he was there?" "He wasn't even there 3 hours before you took him home," the vet told me. "The police brought him in. We checked him, and you checked him out." "Is there any way I could talk to the previous owner?" "Ordinarily, I'd say no for privacy reasons, but in this case, it's more than that." "What do you mean?" "The previous owner is dead. That's why we have Reed. The neighbors reported it. When the police arrived, they found the body of the old owner and Reed. According to my file here, the owner had been dead for more than 2 weeks before they found him." 2 weeks? I asked, with amazement. "What did Reed eat for a week, if you say he's in fine condition?" The doctor fell silent for a moment. "That, I don't know." But I knew. I hung up the phone and turned to see Reed in the kitchen hallway, staring. His eyes seemed less patient now, and more desperate. I'm not sure how much longer before Reed decides to eat.
This story happened more than 10 years ago, when I was still a student. It has a few graphic details of animal harm and graphic violence, so discretion is advised. A bit of a backstory. As with most students, I was always broke and had a few ventures apart from my part-time job to bring me extra money. One of them was house and pet sitting. I have always had a love for animals, so when this couple contacted me to ask to house sit for them for the last few days before they returned from their overseas trip, as the last sitter had bailed on them and their 6-month-old golden retriever puppy would be alone, I jumped at the opportunity. The fact that they promised to pay me at the full 2-week fee for staying there less than a week made it just more appealing. Little did I know how bad it would turn out. I got the details, got the keys from the agent, and headed over to the house as it was already after 5 p.m. and almost dark, as it was early spring. I got to the house, which was a really nice place, but it bordered a not-so-good area that was and still is prone to crime. House break-ins, robberies, etc. It did not bother me much, because, nothing will happen to me. I know, young, naive. The first 4 nights went without a hitch, watching movies, jacuzzi, and just generally enjoying myself. The owners would have returned on the 5th day, fairly late at night. I went over to check on the doggo. I got a call from them about 10 p.m. saying their flight got delayed. They are going to stay in a hotel and do the 3.5-hour drive back the following morning, and asked if I could sleep there again that night, which was fine. I was already there and had my overnight bags still in my car. I called my dad to let him know of the plans, as I was still staying with my parents, and he specifically asked what the address was. I normally did not give them details like that, because I was old enough to look after myself. I still believe to this day that probably saved my life. I eventually got back to bed about 1 a.m., and it felt like I have only slept 5 minutes when I was awoken to a window breaking, and I could hear movement and what sounded like footsteps running down the hallway. The first thing I did was grab my phone and just hit redial. Thanks to my old Motorola phone, redialing was as simple as pressing one button, as my dad was the last number that I had called, hoping that he wakes up from the call. I then dropped the phone in between the headboard and mattress in case my dad picks up that he can hear what is going on. I had barely done that when the first guy stormed through the bedroom door. I could see his silhouette, and he had a knife in his hand. When he saw me, he raised it and came at me. Now, one thing to those that is unfamiliar with South Africa and the crime is that robberies and house invasions usually are very brutal and violent. People get murdered or tortured if they in the slightest retaliate or not cooperate with the robbers. Out of instinct, I raised my legs back when he came at me, and when he came within reach, I kicked both legs out as hard as I can. Now, I'm not a small guy. I'm 6'3", and at that stage, I weighed about 100 kilograms, or 220 pounds, and I was fit and strong. My time not spent at the uni or work was at the gym. I could do an easy 250-pound bench, 350-pound squat. When I kicked and made contact with the guy, he completely lifted off the ground and shot into the wall. Luckily, the knife shot out of his hand as well. Before he got the chance to get up, I was on top of him, driving my right knee into his face, and in return, his head into the wall. I knew that my life depended on it, so I put in some extra force. The guy dropped like a sack of potatoes. But before I could get up, I heard the sound of a pistol cock, and I froze. It felt like all the blood drained from my body, and I became just numb. I remember the only thing that went through my head was that if he shot me, that I would rather die than be disabled, or dependent on other people that will have to take care of me. He stood like that with a pistol against my head for what felt like hours, but was probably less than 10 seconds. I did not move, and he eventually said, in very broken English, to get on the bed, face down. I panicked, but I thought if he wanted to shoot me, that he already would have done so. So I did as he said. He threw a blanket over me, and I turned into a fetal position with my back against the wall. So if they wanted to stab me, that I had my legs and arms in front to protect my body. Now by that time, I had forgotten that I had called my dad, and the guy that I had kneed is still down. I heard a third guy come into the room, and I could hear what sounded like Portuguese to me. I could not understand what they said, but I recognized it, as we used to go to Mozambique on holiday a lot, and that is the main language spoken there. The one guy tried to get the guy that I put down off the ground, while the others started to ransack the house, shoving valuables into a big bag. It was about at this time that I heard tires screeching and a car approaching at what sounded like Mach 1. The car skidded to a halt right in front of the gate, and I heard someone scream. It was my dad. The three inside the house panicked, and ran out the back door and tried to jump the fence. My dad opened fire, shooting in their general direction. Now, I know my dad missed them on purpose, cause if he wanted to hit them, he would, as he is not one of, but the best shot that I know. And I'm not just saying that because he's my dad. He is an ex-Army Special Forces, or RESs for those in the know. Represented SA in the Clay Pigeon World Championships a couple of years, has various regional pistol and rifle championship titles, and is a gunsmith by occupation. I've seen him hit golf balls at 50 meters with his pistol. Politics and the racial situation in the country would have had him in big trouble had he hit one of them. I grabbed the house keys and pressed the gate remote, and my dad called the police while he came in. I met him at the front door, and we walked out to the car to wait for the police. It took them over an hour to get there. Some excuse of no vehicle available. By that time, I had calmed down and started to look for the dog. I could not find her anywhere. I grabbed a flashlight from my dad and started scanning the surrounding yard. And as I got to the corner, I could see her laying on the ground. I got to her and saw she was dead. Later autopsies revealed she was poisoned, and the police found pieces of meat laced with poison near the fence. Poisoning is pretty standard practice in my country for dealing with dogs at a house or area that is targeted for a break-in or robbery. I was fuming, so sad. The police was also pretty useless and had a don't-give-a-shit attitude and barely took our statements. By that time, it was starting to get light. I retrieved my bag, phone, and locked the house as good as I can without touching anything, and drove home behind my dad. Only when I got home, I got the story from my dad's side. He said he answered my call, only to hear the shouting and what sounded like fighting going on. And when I did not respond, he flew out of the house and raced over. Luckily, he asked me for the address the previous night, and he knows the area well to know exactly which house it is. Now, my dad got there pretty quickly, and he said he stayed on the line the whole time, only hanging up when he stopped at the gate. My parents' house is about 10 kilometers, 6 miles from there, through a residential area. It's normally about a 20-minute drive. The call duration was 7 minutes 13 seconds. I met the detective there later that day, gave my statement, they took fingerprints, etc., and the owners got back about the same time. The rest of the day was a blur as I came down from the shock and adrenaline. Now that is not where the story ends. About 7 or 8 months later, I got a call from the detective telling me they caught the guys and I must come to a lineup to point them out. I specifically told her that I did not see any of their faces as it was dark, and after the guy held the gun against my head, I was under the blanket and did not see anything. She assured me that they caught them on fingerprints and will show them to me beforehand, which might not be the ethically correct way to do it, but they wanted to have as much evidence as possible against them. You will understand why in a minute. I got to the police station, and unlike you see in the movies, there is no one-way glass or separate room. They bring the 3 guys into the room and make them stand against the wall. The one, which I was later told was the leader, which was the one I had kneed, looked at me with so much hate as I had never seen in my life. He had the eyes of someone that would slit your throat and not blink an eye. His name was Joseph Dragon Sambo. He pulled his hand up to his neck and made the slit my throat gesture. You know which one I mean. We left the room, and the detective gave me a copy of his rap sheet. Amongst others, 4 counts of murder, I think 8 to 9 for attempted murder, multiple assault, aggravated assault, over 100 of house break and robbery, rape. I was shocked. The detective told me that had I not taken him out first and fast that night, I would have definitely not gotten away so lightly. Now, this is also not where the story ends. 3 days later, I get another call from the detective saying that I should be careful as he had escaped from custody and they had not caught him yet. I was not worried too much, as the robbery wasn't at my house and I had changed cars, so he probably could not find me. Also, I got my firearm license and carried my pistol on me 24/7. I did not hear anything after that, until about 2 years later, when I saw the detective in the grocery shop. We started talking about the case, and she told me that he was killed during a home invasion. He broke into the wrong house, and the owner was waiting for him, pistol in hand. Shot him one in the stomach and one in the neck. And thanks to the slow response time of emergency services and police, he bled out on the guy's living room floor, ridding society of a piece of human garbage. I want to add a bit of info to this. All three that were caught were Mozambican nationals, undocumented and no fingerprints or ID in the system, essentially illegal immigrants. And it is of opinion in SA that more than 70% of all violent crime is done by illegal immigrants, mainly Mozambican, Zimbabwean, and Nigerian descent. It makes it fairly easy, because none of those countries have extradition to SA. So if it gets too hot, they just flee back over the border and nothing can be done to them. The whole ordeal has made me more vigilant, heightened my situational awareness, and made me a little paranoid to double and triple check all doors, locks, etc. Also, thanks to my heightened situational awareness, has allowed me to remove myself from a few potential dangerous situations in the years after the incident. But it has also robbed me of my peace of mind. I have since immigrated to a safer country, but I still sometimes wake up at night if I hear a noise. So to keep up with tradition, Joseph, we will never meet again, as you have passed. But to his cronies, or anyone that wants to try something similar, please do pay me a visit. I will arrange your swiftly departure and reunion with Joseph in hell. And to Joseph, I hope you died in agony for poisoning Daisy. Marcy found a flash drive under the mattress when she was changing the sheets on Emma's bed. We both found it odd. Why was our 5-year-old daughter, who can barely work a laptop, in possession of a flash drive? And why was she seemingly hiding it from us? As a parent, it's easy to jump to conclusions. A million different scenarios, each worse than the last, passed through my head when Marcy told me, and judging by the look on her face, her mind was running parallel. Somehow we both stayed calm. We agreed to check it out after Emma was asleep. We wouldn't even mention the flash drive to her until after we'd seen what was on it. That way we'd know how to approach her. Marcy led Emma upstairs and put her to bed around 9 o'clock that night. When she came back down 20 minutes later, I'd already plugged the drive into the back of the TV in the living room. She sat down next to me on the couch, and we navigated to the correct input. There was only one folder titled Mushi's Barnyard on the drive. We clicked into the folder, and 4 video files popped up. The thumbnail pictures for each video showed a cow hand puppet on a set, which looked like a farm. Each was between 20 and 24 minutes long. We turned on the first episode and watched a few minutes. The cow puppet, Mushi, talked about the alphabet and colors and a few other subjects that were perfectly common for a children's show. Marcy and I both sighed in relief. "It's just a TV show," Marcy said. "Thank God," I replied. "I wonder why Emma was hiding it." Marcy said. "Maybe she got it from Claire's brother." Claire Wilson was Emma's best friend. She lived a few blocks down the road with her parents and older brother Jason. From what I understand, Jason is a bit of a deadbeat. He's almost 30 and spends every waking second in the Wilsons' basement playing video games, smoking weed, and drinking with his buddies. "What do you mean?" I asked, starting to get worried again. Marcy chuckled. "Not in a bad way, hon. Claire's probably been watching this Mushi's Barnyard on TV and telling Emma how good it is. And since we don't have cable anymore, she stuck a finger at me in a jokingly accusatory way. Emma can't watch it." Marcy stood up, stretched, the universal sign for time to go to bed, and continued. "I'll bet they asked Claire's brother if he could help them, and he downloaded it illegally.
He probably told him how he got it, and that's why she hid it from us. I turned Marcy's theory over in my head. It held water for sure, and after I approached it from a few different angles, I couldn't find a hole. Case solved. Marcy took the flash drive out of the TV and put it in the odds and ends basket on top of the fridge. We talked briefly how we were going to approach Emma about this situation and decided that we would focus on the hiding aspect instead of the illegal downloading one. After that, we made our way to bed. I woke up a few hours later with a pit in my stomach. Even though Marcy's theory made sense, I couldn't think of a more logical one. Something didn't feel right. I grabbed my phone from the bedside table and Googled Mushi's barnyard. No results. The pit in my stomach grew deeper. I decided not to wake Marcy up. It was past 4 in the morning, and she had to be up for work in less than an hour. As quietly as possible, I got out of bed, went down to the kitchen, fished the flash drive out of the basket on top of the fridge, and plugged it in. The first episode continued as I remembered. Alphabet, colors, singing, dancing, etc. By the time there were only a few minutes left, the pit in my stomach was all but gone. I'd resigned myself to paranoia. But then, it got weird. "Time for my favorite part of the show," Mushi sang in a high-pitched voice. "It's time to play. Let's help Annie." A woman appeared on the left side of the screen. Her hands were bound so tightly with rope that I could see red marks on either side. The rope trailed away from her wrists and continued off-screen. Her hair was greasy, and it looked like she hadn't showered in weeks. The look on her face said it all. She was terrified. I turned down the volume on the television and moved closer. This woman, Annie, just the sight of her was not normal for a children's show. The way she looked would, in itself, give Emma nightmares. "This is Annie, boys and girls," Mushi said. "Annie's in trouble, and it's up to you to help her. The farmers caught her stealing some corn, and they say the only way they'll let her go is if you help them with a few things." Annie sniffled a bit, and I saw the rope tighten briefly on her wrist, causing her to flinch. "What the farmers want you to do," Mushi continued, "is help them with their mouse problem." Mushi pulled out a gallon-sized plastic bag and laid it on the bench in front of him. "All you need to do is catch a mouse. I like to use cheese or peanut butter. Put it in a plastic bag, just like this one, and seal it as tight as you can. If enough of you boys and girls do that, then Annie will be just fine." I looked at the TV in awe. What was this? Why were they making children kill mice? And who the fuck was Annie? "I'll see you on the next episode, boys and girls," Mushi sang as a little tune played in the background. The video ended. After that, I watched the last 5 minutes of each of the other episodes, fast-forwarding until Annie came into the picture. In each episode, she looked skinnier and dirtier. Cuts and bruises appeared on her forearms and shoulders, and by episode 3, she was limping. In each episode, when Mushi introduced the "Let's Help Annie" bit, he explained that not enough kids had done what the farmers asked. It was the boys' and girls' fault that Annie looked worse in this episode. And in each episode, the farmers' demands got more worrisome. In episode 2, Mushi tells the kids to run away the next time they go to a store with their parents. In episode 3, he asks them to go out late at night, after their parents are in bed, and walk around for a bit. Both worrisome, sure. But episode 4 is the one that sent me flying up the stairs to wake up Marcy. It's a wonder that she understood anything that came out of my mouth. I was panicking, and it all came out like water from a busted hydrant. She rubbed my back to calm me down but I could see that panic was starting to strike her too. Together, we went into Emma's room and woke her up. "We found the computer stick under your mattress, sweetie. We wanted to know, where did you get it?" Marcy asked. "Claire gave it to me," Emma responded, still rubbing the sleep from her eyes. "Where did she get it?" "I don't know, Mommy." "Have you watched it? Has Claire watched it?" "I tried to, but Annie was too scary. I didn't kill any mice, Mommy, I swear." Emma's eyes began to glisten with tears. "Am I in trouble?" "Absolutely not, sweetie. But I need you to tell me, has Claire watched it?" Emma nodded. "She said she watched almost all of them. She was going to watch the last show tonight." Marcy's head began to turn towards me, but I was at the top of the stairs before we made eye contact. Within a few seconds, I was out the front door and sprinting down the street towards Claire's parents' house. When I got there, I noticed that the front door was cracked open. Not much, only about the width of a broom handle, but enough to confirm my fear. I didn't have a weapon on me, and I couldn't find anything in the yard. I'd even forgotten my phone on the coffee table. As I sprinted back to my house to call the police, I knew I was too late. The police confirmed it shortly after. In the last episode of Mushi's Barnyard, Mushi says, "Good job, kids. You helped Annie. The farmers have decided to let her go, all thanks to your hard work. All you need to do is, after your parents go to bed, of course, call the number at the bottom of your screen, say your address, and unlock your front door. The farmers will drop her off at your house, and she'll be safe and sound."
Psychopaths don't yawn back. I don't know whether you've heard that before. Yawning is generally contagious, even between humans and dogs. But not with psychopaths. It's to do with the lack of empathy. The more cold-hearted a person is, the less likely they are to yawn back at you. I've been studying psychopathic behaviours for the last year. Sometimes I talk to people who have been diagnosed. I provide a friendly ear, some kind of advice, or simply a conversation. They've really helped with my understanding of some topics. I offer to get the hot drinks, pay attention to how people take their coffee. Here's another little-known fact. Psychopaths often prefer bitter tastes. Now I sit, facing the board, giving a presentation on psychopathy. My hair is immaculately combed to one side, my clothes neatly pressed. I sip my sugary tea, cover my mouth when a yawn carries through the audience. Small details, but I'm a perfectionist. In conclusion, I say, giving a wide, trustworthy smile, I'm sure you can see that I was misdiagnosed. I am of no danger to myself or others. I'm sure the other residents here can also attest to that. I never harmed because I wanted to. I hated every minute. I harmed to try and fit in with my awful cousins, something I no longer believe is necessary. I am not them. I am a stronger person now because of you all. As I leave the room so they can discuss my case, I consider what my first steps upon release will be. I'm pretty sure I've got the psychiatry board charmed. My parents will be so relieved to hear that I'm all better. My research has paid off and also given me some wonderful ideas. Who better than me to follow in the footsteps of the great like Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy? But unlike them, I'll be smart enough to evade notice. "23rd of May, 11:45. For the purposes of the tape, please state your name. Derek Thornley. Right. Tell me what you know of Colin Tilley. Well, I've heard of him, but I can't put my finger on it. Did I design his garden? May 24th, 1510. For the purposes of the tape, please state your name. Steve Thinter. Tell me, what do you know about Colin Tilley? He's an acquaintance. We sometimes have a drink together. What do you talk about when you have a drink? It depends, really. We're quite similar in some ways, you know. Family circumstances and all that. And he's a dab hand with the old woodwork. I'm a furniture maker. Do you ever think he might harm anyone? Nah, he's salt of the earth is old Colin. 26th of May, 9 o'clock. For the purposes of the tape, please state your name. Derek Thornley, am I in trouble? We just need you to answer some questions. We're going to show you a video taken by our officers. Hey, I know that garden. I did the landscaping for it. Why are police digging up the garden? Are those bones? Do you mean to say that you don't know nothing about this? Absolutely not. 27th of May, 1410. For the purposes of the tape, please state your name. Steve Thinter. Is this about Colin again? We're going to show you some photographs. Could you please describe what you're seeing? Okay, so that's called a pillory. It's an old-fashioned torture device. You see those holes? They secure the head and hands. It's a finely made piece. It wouldn't be out of place in a museum. I couldn't have done all that detailing better myself. Have you ever made one? No, it's not really my thing, but I appreciate the craftsmanship. 28th of May, 12:15. For the purposes of the tape, please state your name. Nathan Tracy, psychologist. Please tell us about this client. This man is Colin Tilley. He first came to see me a year ago. Colin suffers with dissociative personality disorder. He has 2 other distinct personalities. We can't get Colin to talk to us. No, I imagine he's hiding. Colin's subconscious could be keeping Colin and allowing his other personalities to come forward instead. Can you coax him out? Potentially, through hypnosis, but that would affect the testimony you're hoping to get. You'll have to be patient. Colin will come through. When he does, I believe he'll freely admit to the abduction, torture, and murder of that little girl. 29th of May, 1645. For the purposes of the tape, please state your name. Colin Tilley. We've already gathered testimony from 3 of your other personalities, including a furniture maker, a landscaper, and a psychologist. But I suspect you're aware of this. Yeah, I did it. Had you going there for a while though, didn't I? It was fun while it lasted.
Fletcher's Vein, 12 miles long. That's a pretty long tunnel, I said to no one in particular. I've been driving for 3 hours straight, and I was starting to feel tired. I just needed to get to the hotel though. An hour and a half tops. The GPS was acting all kind of wacky though, and when the car entered the tunnel, it suddenly went black. Strange, I noted, looking at the bizarre design of the walls passing us by. They looked a lot like ancient hieroglyphs. Weird glyphs etched into the rock. They came in all shapes and sizes too. Wave-like, mesmerizing patterns. Like a story told in an unknown language. "You should keep your eyes on the road," my wife yawned. I nodded, eyes still transfixed on the walls. We must have been driving for 5 minutes when I first noticed the ceiling. "Hey," I said, "doesn't that look an awful lot like a spine?" Bone-like protrusions, interconnected like a warped spine, ran along the vague outlines above. "This is one damn creepy tunnel," I mumbled. "Daddy said a swear word," my youngest, Michael, said. "Sorry," I chuckled. "Won't happen again. Promise." Another 10 minutes passed, then 15 more, then half an hour. The tunnel was slowly changing, the bone-like protrusions now creeping down the walls. Skull-like shapes and hollow crevices, vaguely resembling human silhouettes, appeared in frequent intervals. "What the hell is going on?" I mumbled nervously. "We should have been out ages ago." "We like it here, Daddy," Caroline, my daughter, chirped happily. "Yes, Daddy," Michael agreed. "We don't want to leave." "Stay with us, Travis," my wife cooed lovingly. "We need you." The tunnel stopped being skulls and bones and sinister outlines soon after. Instead, it slowly transitioned into fleshly fissure, thin, wary skin stretched over pulsating growth, faces and mouths, and hand writhing underneath. My mind couldn't fathom what was going on, I suspect. So I kept on driving. The once smooth tunnel road, now splashing with horrible squelching noises as the car rolled along. "Stay," my wife murmured hollowly. "Screw this," I yelled, and put the pedal to the metal. The car screeching discordantly as I plowed through the squirming grotesqueness. I could see it in the distance. Light. The tunnel got narrower and narrower, and the car barely fit through the opening at the end. But we made it. We made it out. I hit the brakes immediately. I couldn't believe what I was seeing in the rearview mirror. The tunnel, it was gone. Just a straight, clear stretch of road visible behind us. Us? I meant me. I remembered then, slowly, steadily, like waking up from a dream or a nightmare. I never got married. I never had kids. The tunnel, it wanted me to stay, to join it, to be one, forever. We've all had them. Strange little things, aren't they? One moment you're yourself, and the next, for one small instant, someone else is in your head. Ignore that red light. Go through. Don't you want to see how many cars will pile up? I could grab that child and throw them over the bridge. Their mother wouldn't even be able to react in time. It would be so easy to grab that knife. I've never stabbed anyone in the stomach before. Don't worry, it's not you. You are fine, healthy and whole mentally. Those are not your thoughts. I'll let you in on a little secret. An intrusive thought is the weakest form of possession. Most aren't even from a singular ghost. Stop for a moment. Think. Where were you? And what were you holding when they came to you? How many people have died on the road with a sharp turn around the bend? Just go straight. Don't worry about the turn. How many suicides happened at the popular bridge you passed on your daily walks? Would people scream if you jumped? Would anyone notice at all? Only one way to know. How many people have owned the gun you bought? Just aim and pull the trigger. He's been yelling at you all day. You don't deserve that treatment. The ghosts add up. Miserable, angry. enraged at the knowledge that death did not receive them kindly, furious in some cases that someone made a decision for them. And they see you, us, me. They see you content. They see you depressed. They see you in all ways, and they hate it. So they whisper and they chant in their congregations, like the buzzing of an angry hive, just a pitch too high for human ears, anger overflowing at each failed possession. Sometimes they manage to get in your mind, just for a second, just enough to make you think about it. And sometimes, if they get you on a particularly bad day, they take your body too, just for a second. They don't need it any longer than that.
This is going to take a while to explain everything, so stay with me. It all comes around. My very first car was a dark green 2000 Volkswagen Jetta. It was the most basic of basics when it came to cars. No options whatsoever, except for an automatic transmission. It was $300, slow, dumpy, no right headlight, drove straight with the steering wheel practically sideways, let out a cloud of white smoke when started. Every stereotype of a poor high schooler's car you can think of. My car was no exception. Despite it being a piece of German crap, I loved that car. I drove it every chance I had. I don't think a day went by that I didn't drive it. I named it Thunder Bunny. She was my baby. My beautiful green baby. But Volkswagens from that generation, Jettas especially, had a pretty bad flaw in the automatic transmission. I'm not sure exactly what causes it, but essentially, the transmissions gradually get worse and worse until the car will not shift into third gear. And there's not a thing you can do from there. So a couple of weeks after Halloween 2019, I was going about 30 miles per hour when the engine suddenly roared and the car wouldn't speed up. I feared the worst, and my fears were justified. My dad, a mechanic, didn't even have hope for my baby. She was gone already. And so, much to my dismay, we started looking for a new car. It only took about a month for us to find her. A dark green 1999 Volkswagen Jetta. Exactly like my old car, but absolutely everything. She was faster, had heated leather seats, auto windows, auto sunroof, everything. All except for an automatic transmission. I knew how to drive manual, so it was perfect. I had a new baby, from the crackhead neighbor girl to Scarlett Johansson. At least in my eyes, I loved that car even harder, named it Little Boy, and was happy. Okay, I'm about to get to the story, but I have a few more quick things to explain. You can skip this if you want. It's important, but not vital to the story. First is for people that might not know, but when you have a manual car, you cannot leave it in gear and take your foot off the clutch. If you do, the car will stall, which is bad. If you do leave your car in gear, you need to turn the engine off before taking your foot off the clutch. If you don't want to turn the car off or have it turn itself off, you need to pull the handbrake or it will roll away. Guess what the only really broken thing on my car was at the point this story takes place? If you guessed the handbrake, you're right. And that was the second thing. No handbrake. Okay, now to the story. I started working as a pizza delivery driver in a smaller, growing town in Michigan. It was good money, but every once in a while I delivered to an incredibly sketchy place and have had a few shotguns pulled on me. One night, about 2 months ago, I was delivery on a Friday. Usually Fridays are very busy, but this day was a little slow. So when a delivery came in at 8:30, a half an hour before we closed, I jumped on it. I realized it was 7.1 miles away, so all of the closing jobs would be done by the time I got back, and I would be able to leave immediately. It was way out of town, in a wood-surrounded neighborhood. But again, no work when I got back to the store. Seemed like a good deal to me. And I'm all about those sort of deals. And so I climbed into my car and went to drive 7.1 miles away. As I pulled up to the house, I began to get a bad feeling. The house was in a small trailer park type neighborhood next to a lake. The kind that the houses are all a good distance apart, with a likely drug problem, and was completely dark. No lights inside, none inside. There was a single car in the driveway and an open window on the side of the house. I pulled in behind the car in the driveway and sat there for a moment. Something was off. By the house being completely dark, I mean there wasn't so much as a night light that I could see. Usually, when I deliver to a dark house, there's at least a light on upstairs, or something that would signal someone being awake, waiting for their pizza. But the house seemed dead. Nevertheless, I put the car in gear, turned off the engine, grabbed the small, cheapest pizza we had, and got out. Without my headlights on, there was nothing. I could barely see the house. The only light was the dim moon. I walked onto the porch and passed the big open window to the front door. As I reached the front door, I saw it. The door was slightly cracked open, just enough for me to see into the void of the house. Thinking of every single horror movie I've ever seen, I said aloud, "Fuck that!" and hurried back to my car. I'm a tall, well-built looking guy, but despite my wide shoulders and baggy hoodie, I'm a frail thing and can hardly fight off a small dog. I got into my car and turned on the engine. My headlights illuminated the house, and almost simultaneously, the living room light behind the big window lit up, and a single guy looked out and walked to the front door. I cussed to myself and weighed my options. If I went up to the door, I could die. If I noped out of there, I would 110% be fired. That meant no new car part, no gas money, no cute dates with my girl, just sitting at home doing virtual schoolwork. It was a stupid choice, I know, but I grabbed the pizza and opened my door. Making a choice I'm damn glad I made. I took the car out of gear and climbed out, mostly so my engine would still be running, so that if I needed, I could run back and immediately take off. I walked to the door where the man had opened it the rest of the way. As I got closer, I got a good look at him. I'm not one to judge a person based on their physical appearance, but this guy's head was cleanly shaven and was covered in tattoos. He was wearing a pair of gray jeans and a white tank top. He had a scowl on his face and was staring me dead in the eyes. I looked past him for a moment into the house, which was completely empty. As I got close enough that I started opening the pizza bag, he started to reach around his waist. I stopped. He was staring at me with the most evil grin I've ever seen. I knew in that moment that I was about to die. I had always heard your life seems to flash before your eyes. I thought about my girl, that she wouldn't know what happened. My work would stop delivering upon my disappearance, assuming that my body wasn't ever found. My dad would regret telling me he was happy for me landing this job. God save thee. That's when I heard it. The distinct sound of gravel under tires. My only pathetically small chance of escape was rolling away. I didn't even look back at the car to know that. I just stared at the man and was about to say, "Fuck you," when he looked back to my car. I heard the sound of the car rolling. It was getting closer. The guy's eyes went from the driveway to behind me. I finally looked over my shoulder. My car had rolled backwards and come to a smooth stop near the mailbox of the house. I looked back at the guy, who had a nervous look. He looked back at me and scowled again, and took his hand out from around his waist. He reached into his front pocket and took out $12 and handed it to me. I gave him the pizza and watched him slam the door shut.
I ran back to my car and practically tore the door off trying to get in. I looked back at the house, and the man was standing in front of the window, staring out at me. You better believe I nearly spun the tires on my way out of there. I kept glancing at my mirrors until I started driving under streetlights. It was easily the scariest moment I've ever had. As soon as I got back to the store, I told my boss about it, and she called the police. We never heard anything about it. I assume they went to the house and only found a small cheese pizza. I started carrying a knife on me at all times, and my boss is considering getting trackers for our pizza bags. Only recently I realized this is a sort of butterfly effect. I thought it was the worst thing ever that my transmission went out, and I cursed Volkswagen for designing such a terrible automatic transmission. But if that transmission was still working, then I would have still had that car when this happened. I would have put the car in park, and it would have sat there while whatever would have happened to me happened. I have zero doubts in my mind that that man was planning on murdering me. So shitty German engineering saved me from getting murdered. I'm assuming that when my car began to roll, the guy assumed there was somebody inside backing up to pick me up. The engine wasn't revving, but if you're about to murder a person, you probably don't focus on those details. Sorry for any confusion.
It was our first meal together for years. Steaks, mine, medium rare. His on the wrong side of pink for me. We'd had colorful past, me and my brother. But here we are, eating together at the same table, just like old times. It's all I wanted. Years back, when we were 8 and 10, we walked up and down our neighborhood every weekend, every day after school. By the ages of 12 and 14, he'd fallen in with the wrong crowd, and I'd followed. One particularly hot summer's day, we went out in shorts and vests, and I had my first score. And so began the decline of my life. Before that day, we sat together and had dinner every evening. Steaks on a Saturday, and it was never the same after the first score. We didn't say much. It was strange after so long. We just sat and ate and enjoyed the company. He struggled to look me in the eyes. Back when he had first got into law, 28 at the time, I showed up at his door at well past midnight. 26, stuttering, mumbling, hi. Well, I don't remember this, but so I was told. I slumped against his door and gently passed out as he denied me entry to his house. He'd already tried everything. So that's why this meal meant so much. After such a long time, to be sitting here with him, nothing could ruin it. And then I heard the jingle of the keys. Warden says, "Time's up, gotta go." The guard says, as he swung open my cell door. It was our first meal together for years, and it was my last.
What was that? What was what? My assistant replies. I paused for a moment. Silence. Must have been my imagination. Ready? Ready. I give the signal, and she flips the switch. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the device starts spinning. Engineers in protective suits are taking readings. Things are going well. Now the device is roaring like a jet engine. Uh-oh. A man has collapsed on the upper level. I radio for help, but before anyone can reach him, there's a flash of white light, and all hell breaks loose. Those closest to the reactor have abandoned their stations and are thrashing around violently. I can see technicians panicking in the observation deck. Another flash. Someone's charging toward me. I can't tell who it is. Their visor is covered in blood. Now they've collapsed. Oh, fuck. What's wrong with their hands? Shut it off now, I scream. My assistant flicks the switch. but the device doesn't slow down. I'm feeling nauseous. When I look back, the engineer that collapsed is gone. What the fuck is happening? Kill the power! My assistant slams the emergency shutdown. The lab goes dark, but I can still hear the device spinning furiously. The generator kicks in, and the auxiliary lights switch on. Another flash. An engineer falls from the upper level and lands right beside the device. They're lying motionless in a pool of blood. Wait a second. They're fading away. How can someone fade away? Now they're gone. The device is getting louder. More auxiliary lights switch on. I can't believe what I'm seeing. Technicians have fused with the equipment. One engineer's legs are embedded in a metal girder. Another's head and arms are protruding from their workstation. I hear a shriek and spin around. My assistant's hands have fused to the controls. She makes a twisted note of fear and pain, then vomits blood onto her visor and disappears. A technician on the upper level is fading too. His hands pass right through the rail. Then he plummets toward the device. He vanishes mid-fall. Another flash, and the glass in the observation deck breaks. It looks like the technicians are screaming. I'm feeling very faint. Now I'm staring at the ceiling. Is the lab getting distorted? No, wait. It's me. I'm fading away. Another flash. I can't hear the device anymore. Someone's speaking. I look up and see myself. I'm completing the final system checks. I look back down. There isn't much of me left. No! Stop! I scream. But the words carry little weight. My previous self pauses for a moment. I'm almost gone. Oh, fuck, it hurts. It hurts so much. Don't switch it on! I look round. What was that? What was what? My assistant replies. I pause for a moment. Silence. Must have been my imagination. Ready? Ready. I give the signal, and she flips the switch.
Dear Mom and Dad, first off, I want to thank you for sending me with Dr. Jeffries to the retreat. I know it wasn't easy getting me here. I said a lot of bad things, and even thought it wasn't really me saying them. I know they must have hurt. Honestly, forcing me into therapy was the best thing you've ever done for me. It's only been 3 weeks, and already you'd be amazed at my progress. I've come so far from the raving mess who needed 3 orderlies to carry him from the house on a stretcher. Even Dr. Jeffries is impressed. With Dr. Jeffries' help, I learned to suppress the voice to the point where I can have an entire conversation without him interrupting. And even when he does interrupt, it's not like before. He can't control my body. He can't take my voice for long. At most, he can say a few words before I kick him out and regain control. I think my improvement is most apparent in writing. When I write, I can edit his words out. You can imagine how liberating it feels to finally be able to express thoughts that are mine and mine alone. Anyway, Dr. Jeffries is very optimistic about my treatment. He says that someday soon, I may be rid of the voice completely. That's actually why I wrote you this letter. I think, with your permission, he'd let me continue therapy at home. I know coming home isn't what you planned. I know you wanted to take it slow. I understand. The things the voice said, the threats, should not be taken lightly. I wouldn't even suggest it if I weren't certain I have him under control. But aside from the occasional verbal slip, I do have him under control. And I miss you. I miss you so much, it hurts. Every night I lie in bed and imagine I'm back at our house, hanging out on the porch, throwing a tennis ball for Buddy. I really think I would improve even faster at home. I love you both so much. Please consider it. Your son, Paul.
I was kidnapped at 4 years old and didn't even realize. I'll start by saying I have a terrible biological father. He has been a shady person all of my life and constantly caused me a lot of grief. This is just one of those examples. When I was 4, my parents split up. My mother and I moved states, and they agreed I would visit my dad every school holidays for a week. This one particular time, I had been with him for a few days when I was playing with my cousin at a nearby park. The car pulled up, and I recognized the man as one of my dad's friends. He called me over, and without thinking, I ran over to him and left my cousin at the park. He asked me if I could show him where my dad lived, and I agreed, and I got in his car. I gave directions and didn't notice at all that they weren't following them correctly. Looking back, I didn't really know the way anyhow. After way too long, I did realize that we were getting closer to the city, which is far from my dad's house. We pulled up at a house I didn't recognize, and the man told me to wait in the car. I did. I didn't feel scared at all for some reason. He eventually took me inside, and I definitely started to feel unsafe then. I mainly remember 2 girls passed out with their tops off, and a much older man was feeling them up everywhere. I made eye contact with this man, and he made me sick to my stomach. I definitely figured out that this was a bad situation by this point. A lady took me into a bedroom and brought me a sandwich. The bread was stale, and I wasn't hungry, but I ate it all because I felt bad for her, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's what I was thinking about. The lady told me a lot of things I didn't understand, but when she left, I remember thinking my dad was coming to pick me up soon. I fell asleep waiting for him. I wet the bed that night, and no one came to see me the next day until I cried very loudly and banged on the door. The lady came back and yelled at me for stinking up her bedroom, and I asked about my dad. She said he was coming tonight after he finished work. She didn't offer me a shower or a bath, so I sat in my soiled pants all day. After that, everything turned into a blur, really. My dad did not come that night, and I was so terrified. In my head, I felt like I was there for months. I thought I was missing school, and everyone had forgotten about me. In reality, I was there for 5 days. They let me take 1 shower. I don't remember eating much, except for boring sandwiches, and I had chips and gravy once. Finally, my mom drove across the country to come and get me. After not being able to get a hold of me or my dad for so long, and then me missing my pre-booked flight home, she panicked and came looking for me. Thank God she did. She found my dad at his girlfriend's house, methed out completely, hiding out. Turns out he owed a lot of drug money to the people who had taken me. They had told him that they had me, but he couldn't afford it, or didn't want me back. Whatever it was, he didn't bother to try and get me back. My amazing mom paid his debt for him after borrowing from a lot of people, and she came to get me back. I remember when someone came into that room and told me my mom was here, and I walked out and I could smell her. It was the best feeling to feel safe again. She took me home, and I didn't see my dad again for a long time. She never called the police. My parents' relationship was very complicated then, and I fully understand the choices she made. I'm definitely okay now. I've spoken about this in therapy, and I've come to terms with most of the things that I went through as a child. But still a fucked up situation for a 4-year-old girl to have been in. So to my dad's friend, the sandwich lady, and even to my dad himself, let's not.
I opened my eyes and found myself at the back of a car driving straight down an empty dark road. The sky was dark, but no signs of the moon or the stars. I looked outside the window, and beyond the road was simply nothing but mist and black. I looked in front of the driver to try and ask where I am or what happened. Hey, sorry, I'm supposed to be on my way to St. Josephine. I work there. Not anymore. My stomach churned. My head felt a bit lightweight. I tried to remember the last thing that happened to me, but all I can seem to recall was waking up inside the car. I was obviously kidnapped, I thought to myself. The mood, the atmosphere. No, I wasn't in any kind of prank. This was the real deal. We stopped in front of a hospital. It wasn't St. Josephine, and it looked like it was in the middle of nowhere. Where are we? I nervously asked. I'm not sure. That depends on you. He walked me down the hallways. Empty. No one was there but the two of us. The hospital was poorly lit. Rooms and offices had lights off. And even though there were obviously splashes of red and blue decor everywhere, it looked like grey and white. We finally stopped at the blue bench outside the emergency room. What now? I asked. He chuckled as he pulled a cigarette from his trousers and lit it up. The smoke graciously danced towards my face. Odd enough, the smoke didn't smell like cigarettes. It smelled more like car fumes. My forehead wrinkled in confusion until flashes of my memory started to come up to me. I could smell fire. I tried to scratch my head and felt something sticky and wet. My mouth slowly opened. Things are a bit hectic at the moment, so you will have to wait here for a while. Wait for what? I asked the man. He smiled. Haven't you heard? Hell is full.
Ibizu. I was cursed by Ibizu when I was 15. Ibizu? The demon, Ibizu. She's responsible for my miscarriages and the deaths of babies. Why do you think you were cursed by Ibizu? Because I was horrible. Because I saw some woman crying at the bus stop near the hospital, and she said she was infertile, and I said... I was only 15, okay? I said it was just as well because she shouldn't pass on her ugliness to the kids anyway. Where does Ibizu come in? Because Ibizu is infertile herself. That's why she kills babies. That night, Ibizu came to me and she said I would lose one baby for each of my despicable years. So I knew I had to lose 15 babies before I could have a healthy one. So what did you do? I started early. I left home and got pregnant at 16. I didn't tell anyone. There was no point. Who was the father? No idea. I've had to sleep with random strangers to get pregnant because I couldn't have a relationship. What man gets with a girl whose body will kill off so many children? I tried to go for the quiet, shy ones. I figured I'd be less likely to catch any STDs. Did you ever tell any of them you were pregnant? No, I'd always go to theirs, see, and slip out once they were asleep. They never even knew my real name. How many times have you been pregnant? 15. 15 stillborn children. And I'm very good at being pregnant. I never show too much, don't get morning sickness. I wear baggy clothes. 3 sick days each time and I'm good to go again. But it's all over now. I'm free. Don't you feel bad for the children? I've come to terms with it. It's worth it because now I can have an actual child. I've met a great guy, actually. He's going to make a perfect father. Do you know why we're questioning you? Probably something to do with my new busybody neighbour. She made comments about my gardening. I had to give each of my babies a proper burial. It's the least they deserve. We went to your garden and uncovered all 15 graves. The most recent 2 died from suffocation. They had inhaled mud and debris. The other bodies were too decomposed, but we believe it's likely that they also died as a result of being buried. Didn't you hear them cry? Well, yes, but I knew it was just a bee zoo, making those noises to make it harder for me. They weren't alive. I love my dolly. Her name is Clara. She has buttercup yellow hair and cornflower blue eyes. Her lips are rosy and small. She makes me think of the garden, so I wanted to call her something nature-inspired, like Rose or Heather. But Daddy said she already came with a name. I like to dress her in frilly clothes, far prettier than I ever get. My other dollies have boring clothes, plain white dresses without a ruffle or a big lace in sight. My other dollies have boring clothes, plain white dresses without a ruffle or a bit of lace in sight. Clara has a big pink bow, as silky as her face. We have tea parties with my other dollies, but they're not as pretty as my main dolly. I pour the tea for them all from my little plastic pot, but they can't drink it. I pass around biscuits and tiny little cakes, but of course they can't eat those, so I just eat them myself. Daddy likes to play with all my dollies, but sometimes I wish I could just play with Clara. Sometimes he comes to the tea parties too. He drinks his tea, he will eat some of the little cakes, but he never wants to look at Clara. He seems to be looking everywhere but at her. Clara is definitely my favourite. For one thing, she keeps quiet all the time. The other dollies don't. Their eyes are too big, almost bulging out, and I can't even see their pretty lips as Daddy keeps tape over them. It doesn't stop the noise though. They're always trying to scream or get away, no matter how nice I make the tea party. I love Clara. She's the only one small enough to pick up. All the others are as big as Daddy. Clara might only be plastic, but that feels much softer than the skin of my other dollies. I love my dolly.
The prison was cold, cold as hell. Leo had been cowering when the ice blob took him. He'd described it coming in, weeping like a child. They'd picture him in the corner, huddled as the thing crept towards him, inch by inch. He'd called for his mother at the end. Alfonso had started singing when Leo began screaming. It was almost involuntary, drowning Leo out. He sang an old song they used to sing on Earth, back before humans were spacefaring. The song was called Black Hole Sun, an old radio transmission, chanty, a melancholy, meandering piece of music. The prison was the only human settlement on Pluto, reserved for the solar system's worst of the worst. Alfonso had been there 10 years. He was assigned to the last cell on the last aisle and had a window overlooking the northern tundra. The Plutonian auroras that sometimes happen at night would make God himself weep. It was almost home. Then the ice blob had come, or the glacier, as some of the other inmates had called it. The guards abandoned ship when it first appeared, swelling up from the subterranean fissures near the southern corner of the prison. At least 2 guards were consumed before the other panicked and fled. Not one prisoner was freed. The guards ran for the escape pods and blasted off towards the nearest cluster colony. That had been a week ago. One by one, the prison was overtaken. The screams started and stopped, block by block. Rumors circulated. It felt like you were freezing to death. No, it felt like you were burning to death. It dissolved you. It melted you, like lava. It was its own creature. It was the planet itself. "It's organic, man," said Victor when the ice blob had broken through his wall that morning. A few hours after, Leo died, screaming for his mother. "It wants our carbon." "What's it look like?" "Like that shit you used to play with as a kid. That gag shit. Like psychedelic blue slime." Alfonso could hear the terror in Victor's voice. "Would you sing to me?" "What do you want to hear?" "Sing that grunge song again. I'm not waiting. I'm getting it over with. Just sing to me while I do it." After a brief farewell, Alfonso did one verse and a chorus. The glacier came through Alfonso's wall later that day, oozing in through the wall itself, almost taunting him in its leading pace. Its blue and white colors shifted like the auroras. Alfonso thought of screaming. Maybe if he screamed loud enough, the bars would shatter. The doors would fall open, and Alfonso could ride it down the ice bulb and find an unused escape pod. No, this was it. Alfonso thought of his wife's face as he battered her to death 11 years ago. He missed her. The ice blob crept towards him, silent. Alfonso sang to it, thinking about the auroras. I've been wanting to talk to my father for months now, but I haven't been able to. I'm so lonely now. I would give anything to talk to him, even if it was only for a minute. I've tried to send him a message. I've tried everything. I get no response every time I call out his name. Of course, I don't. What's the use of it? I know he won't talk back, and yet I keep trying. I was watching TV a couple of days ago. In my current state, watching TV is pretty much the only thing I'm able to do. Watching TV keeps me from bursting into tears when I think of all the things I did with my dad. Keeps me from remembering I won't be able to do them again, or that I'll never be able to talk to him or tell him I love him. At least not until we are both on the other side. And who knows how long that would be. TV pushes the grief down a little, so I'm sitting there watching the channels flick. When I see one of those psychic shows, you know what I'm talking about. I never believed in psychics, but now I'm getting desperate. I really want to talk to my dad. I want her to come here so I can speak to him. After a couple days of hoping, she came. She was tall, and her hair tucked in a bun. She looked very sweet. I ran up to her and just about talked her ear off. After a minute, I realized I was probably overwhelming her. "Sorry, miss, I just..." And then I noticed she wasn't even looking at me. She was a fraud, and my father was clearly believing her lies. "My son died 3 months ago. He was only 16. Can you talk to him, wherever he is?" "I'm right here." I can sense sadness within him. Did he cause his death in some way? I found him hanging in his closet. He wanted to let you know he's sorry he caused you so much pain. He wants to let you know the next world is better than the one he was living in. That's not true. I didn't kill myself. Dad, your ex-girlfriend put sleeping pills in my food. She wrote the note. Please, hear me. How could I not have seen he needed help? God, this is all my fault. I've failed as a parent. It's okay. He's not suffering anymore. Yes, I am. And you are the one causing it. You liar. As my father breaks down crying, I try desperately to console him, but he cannot hear me.